Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Mollivirus. Back in 2015, French researchers discovered a gigantic virus that they found in a sample of Siberian permafrost. This spherical DNA virus wasn't just any old virus. No, this one was about 30,000 years old. For the virus to survive that long, frozen in ice, truly is remarkable and also absolutely terrifying. There is good news, however. It is said that although some refer to this virus as a behemoth, it is said that the new discovery only infects amoebas, which means that it is unlikely to ravage the planet anytime soon. At least we hope. In our number 9 spot today, we have Lake Vostok. Many of us have heard of Atlantis, but have you heard of Lake Vostok? This lake is located in Antarctica, and it is so huge it's one of the largest lakes in the entire world. The lake not only has a large surface area, but it's also quite deep, which only adds to the volume of the lake. It's like the lakiest lake out there, and here's the thing about it. It is covered by ice, and not just any ice, but the East Antarctic ice sheet, which is just the largest ice sheet in the world. This subglacial lake has ice so thick that we don't really know a lot about what lies beneath it, and the ice has been there for millions of years. But when the first samples of the actual lake water were taken, it became apparent that there may be species in the lake that we know absolutely nothing about. In our number 8 spot today, we have the female mummy. Back in 2017, there was a mummy found in Siberia that absolutely rocked the scientific community. This discovery was so remarkable because deep within the permafrost, close to the Arctic Circle, they found the mummified remains of a woman who was roughly 900 years old. Said to have come from the medieval times, this marked the first woman to be discovered in that area, as previously it had been mostly men. It appears as though the mummification part was accidental, but it was quite a surprise to researchers who had thought that they wouldn't find a woman's remains in the area at all. It is said that all of the bodies found in this area belonged to a hunting and fishing civilization, and this discovery gave experts very valuable insight into their lives and the times in which they lived. In our number 7 spot today, we have Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus is the highest active volcano in Antarctica, as well as the southernmost active volcano on Earth. Got a lot going on. The volcano has been active for 1.3 million years, and it features a lava lake in the inner summit crater that's been present since the early 1970s. You might be thinking, it's a volcano, which surely is like the opposite of ice, right? But as it turns out, this volcano is like the definition of fire and ice. Here you can be sure to find numerous ice fumaroles, which are ice towers that form around the gases that are released or that escape from the vents on the surface. This creates a perfect home not for many, but for some persevering and adaptable bacteria and fungi. This gives scientists quite the opportunity to study these organisms that can live in this extreme environment that doesn't really provide a lot of resources. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Iceman. The mummy of Otzi, who is also referred to as the Iceman, was found in 1991 in the Otzal Alps in Italy. It is believed that Otzi lived around 3000 BC, and his body became mummified and preserved because of the glacier that surrounded him post-mortem. While this is an incredibly interesting discovery, the finding of Otzi may have come in a package with an old curse just waiting to be released. Here's the thing, the people who helped with the discovery of Otzi are all dying under mysterious circumstances. I mean, it is said that there were 7 deaths in 1 year alone, so if there is a curse, it's clearly a pretty strong one. It's almost as if disturbing a man who's been in the same spot for 53 centuries wasn't the best idea that anyone's ever had. In our number 5 spot today, we have Europa. We are going off planet for this one. One of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, has a red tinge to it, and in 2001, NASA scientists revealed that it's possible that alien microbes might be responsible for this red color. The surface of this moon is mostly ice, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a really bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and compounds to make the data make sense. There are some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions that also have that red and brown color, which could potentially be responsible for the color on this moon. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where they are located. Some geological activity on the moon could then push them closer to the surface, where they are then flash frozen in place. In our number 4 spot today, we have P38. In 2018, a team of researchers were using a drone with ground-penetrating radar technology when they found something that no one could have predicted. 300 feet deep in the Greenland ground, encased in ice, was a world World War II plane. This P-38 Lightning fighter plane is actually just one out of 8 that were a squadron. This P-38 Lightning fighter plane was actually just one out of 8 that were part of a squadron. This group had all been lost and had crash landings after a blizzard on July 15th, 1942. After locating the fighter plane, researchers were able to then excavate it, but there still remains at least 4 in this squadron that have yet to be located. In our number 3 spot today, we have Skeleton Lake. Also sometimes referred to as Mystery Lake, this place is exactly what it sounds like. It's a lake and there's a bunch of skeletons there. Located in the Himalayas, this lake freezes over in the winter months, but when the snow melts, there are various skeletons around the site that become visible around the edges of the lake. There have been many speculations as to how these people died, and at one point it was thought that these remains were a result of a pretty legendary event where, all in a single group, they were killed by a large and violent hailstorm, but the leading theory has since changed. Now it is said that the remains actually belong to 3 distinctly different groups who all died in separate events. At this point, the real story of what happened here may just remain a mystery that has left us with a haunting image. In our number 2 spot today, we have Luba. This is the name that was given to a baby mammoth. Mummified remains were found frozen and extremely well preserved in ice. Luba would have roamed the earth about 48,000 years ago, which is truly incredible to think about. These mammoth remains were found in 2007, but it was actually a complete accident. The remains were found by a hunter who was out on a frozen peninsula in Russia. But here's where the story takes a bit of a crazy turn. So the man who discovered these remains didn't want to touch her because of a cultural belief that touching a mammoth would cause a bad omen, so he traveled to a nearby town to consult a friend, and this is when they decided to contact the authorities. The authorities then flew out to the area to collect the remains, but when they arrived, she had disappeared. The person who found her knew that someone had likely taken her to try and turn a profit, so he began doing some investigations. Long story short, they found the remains outside of a local store, and this is when it was revealed to them that the guy who had found the remains initially, his cousin had stolen them and brought them here in exchange for 2 snowmobiles. In the end, there was unfortunately minor damage to the body that included dogs having chewed off her right ear, but still the find and discovery was still incredible, and she was transported to a museum where she continues to give people a look into a time on Earth long ago.
Number 10. Abandoned whiskey. Alright, here we go. Part 1 and 2 of this list was pretty dark, so we'll kick this part 3 off with 10-year-old McKinley whiskey. An explorer found the crates in the hut of Ernest Shackleton. Inside were these frozen bottles of scotch, all the way from 1907. This may be the best discovery on this list, but it's been locked up, of course, obviously, such a historical find, but you'll be happy to know a sample was given to Scottish distiller White and Mackay. Yeah, they're currently studying this recipe to try and bring it back to life. Imagine seeing Ernest Shackleton's whiskey in stores on shelves. I'd be like, oh, what? Okay, debit. Number 9. Surgical notebook. Whenever explorers find notebooks, I'm so interested right off the bat. Maybe I've played too much Zelda, I don't know, but notebooks feel very national treasure to me when you find them. This notebook here once belonged to a surgeon, believe it or not. It's over 100 years old and it was found in a frozen hut in Antarctica, and the owner was George Levick. He was a photographer and of course a surgeon who traveled with the last expedition of Robert Scott. This expedition was from 1910 to 1913. Now the book itself was completely frozen and the bindings were completely toast, but the parts that they can read today is pretty historical. You can still read descriptions of photos that George took at Cape Adair. Like his first observation, all those notes that he took down, we can still read those, so it's amazing. Imagine in 100 years you find a notebook and it's just a bunch of like crazy S's that we used to draw back in school, like those pointy, like one of these, hang on. Haha, haha. This is Disney Channel, the guy would be like, he nailed it, that was perfect. Number 8, the Glacier Girl. Before you get worried, this next one is a plane, not a woman. I got your back. A P-23 aircraft was discovered in Greenland surrounded in ice. Now this was during World War II in July 1946, when 6 P-38 fighter planes were ordered to make an emergency landing in Greenland due to, lousy weather conditions and of course low visibility. The crew was saved, but the lockhead had to be abandoned, sadly, never to be seen again for 50 years. It was then dug out of 264 feet of snow and ice, and it took years to finally get this plane back in action. She's known as the Glacier Girl, and in 2007, Lewis Energy CEO Rodney Lewis bought the plane. Number 7, million-year-old plant. Back in 2019 in, of course, Greenland, a preserved fossil of a million-year-old plant was discovered. We love it. This was under the ice near a secret Cold War military camp. Yeah, an ancient flower found at a Cold War military camp. What a headline that would be. In 1959, Project Iceworm was underway. Now, I mentioned that project on this channel here before, and that in itself is a pretty bizarre frozen adventure in history, okay? Eventually, the project was scrapped and it was abandoned. Now, cut to 2019, it was rediscovered, and scientists at the University of Vermont found parts of a million-year-old flower. Not what you'd expect to find under a secret Cold War base, you know? He's like, oh, it's kind of nice. The fragments were all so well preserved that it looked like the flower had died recently, not, you know, a million years ago. Studying these plants can also provide clues on our future and where our current plants might end up. Number 6. 3 Inca mummies. Discovered by John Reinhardt on March 16, 1999 near the summit of Lilico, so around 7,000 meters up in the sky. This is near Argentina and Chile borders. This is far away. Further studies found that they were most likely sacrificed all in the name of a religious Inca ritual around the year 1500. Yeah, so quite a while ago. They were found in a small opening less than 2 meters deep under the ground, so again, this discovery was shocking. They looked like they were just asleep, but in reality, they died sometime around the 1500s. They're some of the most well-preserved mummies in the world. They now rest at an exhibition at the Museum of High Altitude Archaeology in Salta, Argentina. So specific, Museum of High Altitude Archaeology. Number 5, Allen Hills meteorite. Okay, this next one is literally out of this world, so buckle up. Back in December 1984, American meteor hunters discovered this fragment in Allen Hills, Antarctica. The meteor was appropriately named Allen Hills 84001, and this rock was speculated to come from Mars. And in 1996, a scientist claimed that he discovered bacteria from the microscopic fossils on the meteorite. Now, this news, of course, spread very quickly, and everybody started losing their goddamn minds. Bill Clinton even chimed in. He made a speech about possible discoveries in space, right? Everyone's freaking out. Could this be aliens? Yeah, the scientific community later said this was not the case after further studies, but hey, never say never. Feels like we're closer to finding life with James Webb right now, honestly. I'm afraid to hit refresh. It's like, here's 700 galaxies. You don't matter. I'm like, thanks, James. We love it. Keep snapping those pics. Number 4, Otzi the Iceman. Discovered in September 1991, this mummy was found on the border of Austria and Italy. He's Europe's oldest known natural mummy. Most of the 45-year-old man from the Copper Age was left in rather great condition, surprisingly. A 5,000-year-old man was found in ice, so I hate to say this, but you lose this round, Captain America. I see you in the comments. I'm sorry, I had to get you out of here one day. Before he passed away in the Italian Alps, Otzi had a number of health problems. He had arthritis, Lyme disease, he was lactose intolerant, which is just horrible. Thanks to science, we now know that Otzi the Iceman was sharpening his tools right before his untimely death. So he fought until the end. Number 3, 3 kittens. Don't worry, they are all okay. Spoiler alert. Had to throw that in because, you know, I care about you. Back in 2020, an oil worker named Drayton Dewish found 3 kittens all frozen to the ground near Drayton Valley. Now, it was mid-January, everything is frozen. This was near an oil well that he'd been working at. On Facebook, they posted about how the 3 kittens were all males and they were all dewormed, and now they were all living under the same roof, much warmer, with a happy family. So, happy ending, there we go. He got them out of the ice by using coffee to melt the ice. How amazing is that? I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Coffee saves lives. That's it. Double doubles? Ooh, every morning. I was frozen outside before, and then I was de-thawed myself with a nice French vanilla. Number 2, message in a frozen bottle. Okay, here we go. Now that song, Message in a Bottle, it's gonna be stuck in everyone's head watching this. Best song from Guitar Hero 2, hands down. That and Surrender by Cheap Trick. What a time, right? So fun. Anyways, back in 1959, back on track, a geologist named Paul Walker, great name, buried a message in a bottle. He wanted to make a lasting statement about climate change, so he put this frozen message underneath rocks near a glacier in 1959. And then cut to 2013, what do we find? Said message in a bottle. The message inside was to measure the length from that point to the edge of a glacier, but by 2013, said glacier had shrunk down 200 feet. So the scientist really did show us. He was like, trust me, in 50 years, I'm gonna get you with this. Imagine he put the wrong note in. They open it up, it just says milk, eggs, bread. Is this a grocery list? This is definitely a grocery list. God damn it. Number 1, Ice Age art. Ancient artwork, this time from the Colombian Amazon. Thing is, unlike other drawings found in the ceilings of tombs, this canvas stretched about 8 miles and it was all frozen. It was just a wasteland. This should have never been found. The paintings are even more impressive. They date back to 12,000 years ago. These were made near the end of the last ice age. Yeah, the end of the last ice age, we're doing doodles. Are you kidding me? I can't even go to the store if it's snowing out. I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna order in, screw that. This guy's making art. Miles of art. These were found in 2017, but it was only last year where they went public with said findings. Those findings being paintings of elephants, massive sloths, horses from the Ice Age, snakes, birds, deer, etc. This is now one of the largest collections of rock art in South America. Yeah, is it pregnant women or the origins of the Ninja Turtles? Art, we don't know, couldn't tell you.
In our number 10 spot, we have a frozen alien corpse. Scientists have discovered this frozen alien corpse in Russia. It was found by 2 people in Siberia after claims of a UFO came to Earth. Allegedly, it was missed by the Russian military after they cleaned up the area after the crash. The corpse was pretty damaged, but the being was 2 feet high and part of his right leg was missing. Also, apparently this particular area in Russia is a hotspot for UFO sightings, and there are a number of reports of sightings every single year. In fact, there was a sighting that reported seeing a UFO crash in the area, and so the finding of this alien corpse aligns with that sighting. Whoa, I want to go to Siberia now. If there is anyone watching from Russia, from Siberia, please tell us of any other sightings that you may have come across in the comment section below. In our number 9 spot, we have traces of potential alien DNA. Scientists have recently discovered traces of DNA outside some of the Antarctic caves, which could suggest alien life. From algae DNA to small animals, there was so much evidence to support the idea that perhaps there once was a lot more living species in Antarctica. They did not come across any animals in the caves at the time, but they still found this to be a great discovery and have reason to believe that they will discover more evidence as they continue their search, or perhaps alien life might be underneath the ice sheets as there are warm temperatures coming from underneath the sheets, and that would suggest that it might be a place they could easily live in. In our number 8 spot, we have UFO discovered. That's right, in October of 2020, satellite photos of Antarctica were taken that had many people stop in their tracks. Surrounded by ice and snow, and with some ice still on it, we see an object that looks like half of a flying saucer that is also a bit raised, casting a shadow around it. As the ice sheets continue to melt around the world, it is believed that is why it has now been revealed, and it is also believed that this is potentially an aircraft from thousands if not millions of years ago. According to experts, Antarctica would be a great place for aliens to go to because of how sterile it is, so it would make sense to land there. Of course, this is all speculation and there's nothing further on this discovery at this time. In our number 7 spot, we have the Alaskan alien. On January 3rd, 1989, NASA's Alaska York Station made a great discovery. They found an alien frozen in ice. Yep, an alien, just like you see in the movies with the great big eyes and bald head. Makes you wonder if perhaps the movies are showcasing these creatures the same because we've already discovered aliens and someone somewhere is telling illustrators to paint them a specific way. I wish I was someone that had pull to know all of this top secret information, although I guess if I was, then I wouldn't be able to make this video as I would probably have a target on my back. There is no other information on this discovery as it is considered top secret, but it is definitely a sign that alien life has been to this planet. In our number 6 spot, we have alien eggs. In 2015, it was reported that 2 friends were walking along a frozen lake in Utah when they discovered the most peculiar thing. There was a strange formation in the middle of the lake that honestly gives me shivers to look at. If you are someone that feels uncomfortable looking at a bunch of dots together or eyeballs looking at you, definitely look away. This has the same sort of displeasing effect. Small holes were seen poking out from the ice with a strange formation lying underneath them. The theories around what this is include a UFO landing spot, something that aliens left when they visited Earth, and the popular theory is alien eggs. There were some things there that were slimy, so the 2 friends left them, and that's why people believe them to be eggs. What do you think this is? Let me know in the comment section below. In our number 5 spot, we have unknown frozen creatures. More frozen creatures in Siberia, you say? Yep, clearly this is an alien breeding ground of some sort. Strange creatures were recently found throughout Siberia. Many of these unknown creatures were found deceased and frozen in huge blocks of ice. There are creatures that have never been discovered which are believed to be alien, and even a species of dog was discovered that is so old it goes back to 1000 AD. Wow, well, I guess we're all going to have to plan our trip to Siberia, eh? I've always wanted to go on an alien expedition, so this is definitely where I will be going next. In our number 4 spot, we have Frozen on Mars. Okay, this one is like a little bit of a stretch, as this evidence was not found frozen on this planet, but it is evidence of alien life, and it was found on Mars, and Mars can get to a temperature of minus 60 degrees Celsius, which is way past freezing, so whatever. Imagine that this evidence was found frozen, as it could very well have been. I just can't prove that, and I wanted to share this anyway. In 1976, the Viking Mars landers detected chemical signatures that indicated potential past life on the planet, or perhaps present life. An experiment mixing soil with radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients tested positive, and even though other tests done at the time did not test positive, the original scientists and others that have reanalyzed the data still stand by the original finding. There is definitely a possibility of alien life on Mars. In our number 3 spot, we have aliens in the water. In an interview in 2017, ex-NASA scientist Alan Stern spoke about the theory of alien life underwater frozen. He mentions that aliens are bound to exist and that scientists should focus more on water worlds. When he was asked about why aliens haven't been found to date, he was quoted as saying that there are many possible explanations. The great majority of worlds with biology and civilizations are water-ocean worlds. ETs at the bottom of ocean worlds would be protected from the likes of deadly radiation from space, if their planet does not have a protective atmosphere like it does here on Earth, and exploding stars. He went on to speak about how ocean worlds are usually freezing cold, and that these aliens would be living beneath a thick sheet of ice, and that is what would make it impossible to contact them. Fascinating. I could totally see this to be true, as there's so much of the ocean that we haven't even begun to explore yet. In our number 2 spot, we have alien fossils from Antarctica. Whoa, this is a wild one. In 1996, NASA scientists announced that they came upon a meteorite that appeared to be from Mars. A fossilized microbe in a potato-shaped lump of Martian rock was how it was described. It is believed that the meteorite was possibly from Mars and blasted off in a collision and wandered the solar system for, approximately 15 million years before coming to Earth and freezing for a little while in Antarctica. After further analysis of the rock, it apparently contained organic molecules and tiny specks of mineral magnetite, as well as nanobacteria. There is much debate about whether this fully indicates alien life, but a lot of scientists believe that it does. In our number 1 spot, we have a frozen ancient civilization. In 2017, there was a whistleblower by the name of Corey Goad, who claimed that it was discovered that an ancient alien civilization is frozen and buried under 2 miles of ice in Antarctica. Apparently, this discovery was made in 1939 by a German expedition, but it was only until 2002 that archaeologists and scientists were allowed on the site. Apparently, Goad originally only knew about this secret expedition because of a USAF officer working in the program, but eventually Goad himself journeyed to Antarctica with the US Air Force to witness this secret project, where they have discovered the ruins of a 55,000-year-old alien civilization. Not much more was revealed, but hopefully in the next 10 years we will learn more about these findings.
Number 10. Dinosaur. When it comes to big things, dinosaurs were pretty damn big. Scientists were able to uncover the fossilized remains of a new and unknown species of dinosaur underneath the ice sheets in Greenland. When the dinosaurs were alive, the Earth was a lot warmer and more tropical, these fossils becoming trapped under the ice when the climate changed into the Ice Age. The skull they found is thought to be a 2-legged plant-eating dinosaur of medium size, and they dubbed the new species Issy-Sinique. The dinosaur is believed to have grown to the size of 10 to 30 feet, and the skull they found is thought to be that of a younger dinosaur that had not fully grown yet.
They used computer technology to create 3D scans of the head before sending the specimens to the Natural History Museum in Denmark, as they have sovereignty over the country of Greenland. It is the first known dinosaur to have been native to Greenland and is thought to come from the late Triassic period around 200 million years ago. Number 9. Bison. The massive carcass of a bison known as a steppe bison was found by a gold mining family in Alaska way back in 1979. They were using a mining hose and were melting a frozen block of ice, effectively thawing out the creature that had become trapped inside. The bison species is from the Ice Age, and the body that they found is thought to be tens of thousands of years old. Once they were finally able to fully excavate the body, they found other things alongside it, including hair, insects, wood, and different plants. When the pelt of the animal reacted to the soil around it, it turned the body blue, and so the bison ended up being dubbed Blue Babe. Analysis of the body showed it had died 36,000 years ago, a result of being attacked by an Ice Age lion. The ice allowed the creature to be incredibly well preserved, scientists even being able to find pockets of blood in the body. Number 8. Cave bear. This specimen found on an island in the Arctic was a very unique discovery, said to be one of the first of its kind. Researchers found a well-preserved body of a cave bear that was around 40,000 years old. Cave bears would grow to be around 7 feet long and typically weighed over 1,000 pounds in their adulthood. Before this discovery was made, they only knew about the animal from skulls and bones, and had never found a specimen that was this fully preserved. The body that they found had all of its organs still, and even still had its nose on its face, paired with its terrifyingly massive sharp teeth. According to one of Russia's leading Ice Age experts, the discovery of the body was of world importance and is the first and only find of its kind. The body was found by a group of reindeer herders on the island and was then sent around to various scientists to study the life of the animal. Number 7. Horned lark. Alright, some of these creatures aren't that big, but they're still pretty interesting, and size doesn't matter anyways. In 2018, fossil hunters were in the northeastern part of Siberia, known as the Pole of Cold, and they were tunneling into the permafrost. Deep underground, they discovered the body of a bird thought to be around 46,000 years old, but it was incredibly well preserved, and scientists say that it looks like it could have only died a few days ago. Researchers believe that it is the ancestor of the horned lark bird and is the first of its kind to have ever been discovered. It is also said to be one of the best preserved specimens ever discovered, as it was almost completely intact and still had all of its parts. The Ice Age that took place is thought to have generated many new species who adapted, and this is one of them. Siberia is home to a lot of frozen discoveries due to its freezing cold temperatures, and who knows what else is sitting in the ice, just waiting to be found. Number 6. Wolf. The Pleistocene era, or Ice Age, lasted from about 2 million to 11,000 years ago, and many great extinct creatures we've discovered come from this era. One of these discoveries was the head of a massive Ice Age era wolf that was still snarling 40,000 years after it had died. It was found in a cold region of Russia and is one of the first full-sized frozen wolves ever to be discovered. They found it in the summer of 2018, and it was described as having mammoth-like fur, sharp fangs, and was between the ages of 2 and 4 when it passed away. Because only the head was discovered, it only gave small clues towards the evolution of wolves and how they have changed and adapted over the years, but researchers were still able to reconstruct the head using 3D models and get a solid understanding of what these Ice Age wolves looked like. In fact, the specimen was so well preserved that it even still had parts of its brain. Number 5. Lion cubs. As I've mentioned before, Siberia is a place that is fairly popular for finding frozen specimens, and this time they didn't just find one animal, but instead 2 matching ones. They found 2 mummified cave lions that lived during the Ice Age around 30,000 years ago, giving them the names Sparta and Boris. They were found in 2017 and 2018 by mammoth tusk collectors, and one of the cubs was believed at the time to be the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found. It was originally thought that the two cubs they discovered were siblings, being only a few months old at the time of their death, but research showed that Boris had actually died about 15,000 years before Sparta. Sparta still had her fur, teeth, skin, organs, and even her whiskers, looking like she may have only recently died despite being a part of a species that went extinct over 10,000 years ago. If given the chance to grow up, the cubs would have managed to grow to 5 feet long and weigh almost 1,000 pounds. Number 4. Sharks. Creatures that are found frozen in ice don't always actually come from the Ice Age. There are plenty of cold places right now where animals can unfortunately become trapped, or pass away and then freeze. In Cape Cod, Massachusetts, it has become startlingly common for giant sharks to become frozen in the ice off the coast. A few years ago, they found a total of 4 different sharks that had all become frozen in the ice and passed away. The sharks were apparently becoming trapped in shallow waters during changing weather conditions, and sudden cold snaps would cause them to freeze and die. The thresher sharks that were commonly becoming trapped were apparently not a very well studied species, so the bodies that were found were taken and thawed in order to be dissected and researched. The Atlantic White Shark Conservancy even went so far to refer to the specimens as sharksicles, but probably not something you'd want to eat on a hot day in the summer. Number 3. Mummies. Human remains are usually found when archaeologists dig up large graves and find skeletons, but in a rare case they manage to find the well-preserved and mummified body of a woman. A group of hikers exploring an Argentinian volcano found the body of a woman who appeared to have died around 500 years ago. The body was well preserved due to the incredibly high and cold elevation at which it was found. It's believed that the body was there as part of an ancient sacrificial ritual, and the woman, named the Inca Ice Maiden, was sacrificed. She was given lots of food and drink before being led up the volcano, where she was left to die of exposure. The discovery of her body was also incredibly important because from samples they took, they were able to discover that she was fighting tuberculosis, and these sorts of samples can help us work towards fighting these diseases in the modern day. Number 2. Foal. In the summer of 2018, they found what they called the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found. Feels like they say that a lot. Anyways, mammoth tusk hunters in Siberia found the body of an around 42,000-year-old horse foal, incredibly well preserved thanks to the cold temperatures. They say that it was only about 2 weeks old at the time of its death, and they were able to extract both blood and urine samples from it. The discovery apparently pushed scientists closer to the hope that they could bring these extinct creatures like mammoths back to life. I think we should listen to Jurassic Park's warnings and just deal with the animals we actually have right now. I know you might be thinking that a baby horse isn't some terrifying giant Ice Age creature, but full-grown horses are pretty big, okay, and they're actually kind of terrifying. I mean, they basically walk on one giant finger. It's creepy, and I don't like it. Number 1. Baby mammoth. During the Ice Age, mammoths were one of the biggest creatures around, basically being massive furry elephants. This young woolly mammoth specimen was found in, you guessed it, Siberia. This incredibly well-preserved body of a young female woolly mammoth named Yuka is said to have lived around 28,000 years ago, and they were discovered around a decade ago. Due to her good condition, scientists were eager to conduct experiments, and one of those was taking cells from her body. When they put the cells together, they found that they were still active, even almost 30,000 years later, so they managed to technically revive Yuka in a way. At full size, woolly mammoths were usually around 13 feet tall and would weigh around 13,000 pounds, or the same as around 26,000 large oranges if that helps you picture it.
Coming up at our number 10 spot, we have a throwing spear. A throwing spear that was approximately crafted over 10,300 years ago was discovered by Dr. Craig Lee from Montana State University in 2007. It was discovered in northern Wyoming. 10,300 300 years ago. Holy moly. Just saying that is so trippy and hard to wrap my brain around the idea of people existing at that point. But in any case, this spear at first glance appeared just like a stick, but then after closer inspection, he discovered that it was a dart from a throwing spear. At this point, it is the oldest frozen artifact found yet. It's been a source of inspiration for others to continue the hunt for artifacts that are being revealed as a result of melting ice patches, and it certainly has created a sense of urgency for people to get hunting for these unbelievable items. In our number 9 spot, we have the Yukon treasures. A size 4 moccasin shoe from 1400 years ago was found melting in the Yukon, and my inner shopaholic is super excited about it. So of course I had to include it on this list. Along with this shoe, 2 other items were found: a barbed antler projectile point from about 1200 years ago, and throwing darts from 9,000 years ago. Apparently they were found by a husband and wife in 1997 who were hunting Dall sheep in the Yukon mountains when they smelt something extremely strange. It was dung. Yes, poop from a caribou. But the thing is, caribou hadn't been in this area for many years, so they decided to inspect it. Naturally? I wouldn't. Anyways, I guess they discovered that the poop was from thousands of years ago that had frozen into ice, and close behind it were these artifacts that had melted along with it. Pretty wild. In our number 8 spot, we have animal hair rope. While out exploring the mountaintops of western Mongolia, archaeologist and researcher Isaac Hart of the University of Utah discovered something quite interesting that he felt would truly help with discovering more about the Mongolia people in ancient times. They discovered a finely woven piece of animal hair rope. This rope was first thought to have been dropped in the ice recently. However, after scientists performed some radiocarbon tests on it to see how old it was proven to be more than 1500 years old. Wow, that's some old rope. In our number 7 spot, we have horn curls. On this same trip, looking for more artifacts, Isaac Hart found some Argali sheep skulls and horn curls from 1500 years ago, which were stacked in a pile by ancient hunters, and this finding completely discounted some old assumptions about the Mongolian people in the past. They were long thought to be herding societies, but these findings show that perhaps they were big hunters on mountain ice. Wow, sometimes just talking about this just makes me feel super grateful to be alive today. Although we are all wimps now, just going outside when it's cold, you know, I'm already looking for the outdoor heater. Where's the outdoor heater? What are we in ancient times? In our number 6 spot, we have Iron Age tunic. Apparently, as Norway's glaciers begin to melt, archaeologists are beginning to uncover a ridiculous amount of ancient treasures, and some say it is about 2,000 plus items to date. One of the most notable items, in my opinion, is some recovered clothing that was found. Honestly, not one item is better than the other. They all tell a story from the past and help us better understand how mountain populations lived. But still, I think it is so cool to see that they found some clothing that's approximately from 300 AD, an Iron Age tunic to be exact. That's not that old though compared to some of the other items that were found on this dig that were approximately 4,000 years old, but still, pretty cool. And one of the older items that was found is in our number 5 spot today, which is the walking stick. Now this item also is not as old as some of the throwing darts that were found, but it's so unique and cool that I had to put it on the list. It's not just any old walking stick. It's a walking stick with runic inscription. Whoa, so cool. I actually have rocks with ruins on them at home that I bought from like a new agey store, and I love to look at them. Ruins are truly fascinating and quite beautiful, so I'm a big believer in symbology and the energy and power infused in symbols. So anyways, when I saw this recovered walking stick from the 11th century AD, I kind of freaked out and needed to share. In our number 4 spot, we have arrowheads. This is actually so cool. The entire video has been so fun to research, but finding this out was very interesting. I definitely need to go to museums more. I don't think I knew that I enjoyed history so much. Anyways, in 2003, a hiker was walking in a mountain pass near Sion, Switzerland, when he came across some treasures. Not gold, sadly, but what he found were items that are arguably way cooler from a Stone Age hunter from over 3,000 years ago. They were fragments of a bow, an arrow case, arrowheads, and leg coverings, all believed to be revealed due to the ice in the glaciers melting due to the rapidly changing climate. Pretty crazy. Imagine just going for a hike and discovering some ancient artifacts. I bet you there will never be a more interesting moment in your life. Although fine, the birth of your future child could be fairly special too. In our number 3 spot, we have the Viking whisks. Technically not considered ancient artifacts, but I thought this was cool and it needed an honorable mention. The melting of glaciers in Norway has actually revealed a lost mountain pass, and with it, hundreds of Viking artifacts have been discovered. The pass was discovered back in 2011, as ever since, the glaciers have continued to melt and more artifacts have been recovered. The archaeologists believe the pass was used from the Roman Iron Age 300 AD to the Viking Age 1000 AD. From horseshoes to sled fragments to wooden needles to wooden whisks, all kinds of artifacts have been recovered. One of the most unique items include a Viking mitten and a blue textile rug. Wow, imagine finding a rug frozen on a mountain. Also, it's just wild to think that the Vikings had rugs. All I can think of when I think of Vikings is war, so it's probably just me and my limited imagination due to my limited knowledge of history. In our number 2 spot, we have arrowheads. Over 100,000 artifacts were recently uncovered in a place called Nunalik in Alaska. These artifacts belong to the Yupik peoples who lived there. There have been stories told over many centuries of a gruesome massacre that occurred during the bow and arrow war days, which was a series of long, brutal battles. Up until recently, the area had been frozen in the subsoil known as permafrost. The most notable items that were found were the slate arrow points that further proved the stories that have been told about these war times. Although these items aren't technically ancient, they are truly a wonder for archaeologists to discover, and I thought it needed to be on this list. In our number 1 spot, we have an ancient lunchbox. A 3,500-year-old lunchbox was discovered in Switzerland in the Swiss Alps. No, it didn't have a 3,500-year-old cheese sandwich in it, but it did have traces of ancient cereal. Whoa, some ancient dude was just walking around the Alps eating an ancient version of Lucky Charms. The lunchbox is a Bronze Age wooden container, and apparently the food traces were of wheat and barley or rye grains. The lunchbox was made from Swiss pine and its rim was made from willow, sewn together with European larch twigs. It was found in a melting ice patch in 2012. That's incredible. Probably my fave find on this list, but anything to do with food just makes me excited. Excuse me as I go pour myself a bowl of Lucky Charms. Feel free to join me if you like.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Arctic hyenas. Only a few years ago, scientists discovered teeth. Yeah, how fun is that? Ancient teeth from Arctic hyenas. Lovely. Now, when you think of hyenas, you would never imagine that they once roamed over Europe and Asia 5 million years ago, right? That's not what we think about when we imagine them scary and drooling in our brains. Remains from these Arctic beasts have been found all over the world, not just the Yukon permafrost. Evolutionary biologist Jack Sung studies prehistoric carnivores, and he knew within minutes that these recent Yukon molars belong to Arctic hyenas, aka Chasmoporthetes. Number 9, frozen treasure. As far as frozen treasure goes, this is a very recent discovery. We don't find these often or ever, as a matter of fact. Yeah, treasure frozen in ice. This sounds like something from Ocarina of Time. I'm so excited. Back in 2013, an anonymous mountain climber, can't imagine why they chose to stay hidden, they stumbled across a box filled with jewels jammed in the ice. Yeah, hear what I just said, a box of jewels in ice. They had to like breathe on it a bit, melt it up, and then finally pull it out. But alas, once they reported it to the French officers, this box contained around 100 precious gems. Precious gems. This was quite the find. Emeralds, sapphires, rupees, you name it. The box was worth 300,000 US dollars, roughly. I find a 20 on the ground, I'm calling in sick. game over. Where did this treasure come from? Well, since it was discovered on Mont Blanc, officials were able to trace the lost gems back to an Air India flight that crashed on the mountain back in 1966. The lives of 117 passengers were sadly lost, and because of the conditions, it's been next to impossible to recover anything from the mountain, especially that long ago, right? Somehow these family gems were able to see the light again, and yes, before you even ask, the owner did return the gems. Only the thing is, 2 families claim the goods, so someone's not telling their truth, my friend. Someone's lying. That means lying, right? I never knew what that meant. I don't know, I saw someone do it and I was like that sound. Interestingly enough, in 2014, a French treasure hunter named Daniel Roche found 50 more pieces of jewelry from the same glacier. So yeah, the world's melting, but we're also finding gold, so Number 8, Western camel bones. Scientific name being Camelops hesternus. It's a Harry Potter spell, turns into a camel. Camelops hesternus. Meaning yesterday's camel in Latin. These bones first appeared in 2008 when gold miners were working in Hunter Creek, just 60 miles away from the Alaskan border, when they suddenly stumbled across these massive bones. The last time these bones were operating, I guess attached to some meat, was 75 to 125,000 years ago. The remains were in such great condition because of the awful surrounding conditions, right? It was so cold that scientists could still extract DNA. And that DNA told us that 10 million years ago, roughly, Western camels split from modern day camels. They were like, hey, it's not working out. You got the 2-hump thing, I got the 1-hump. It's cold, you're hot, I don't know. I never called the imaginary camel hot, but here we are. That thumbs up for hot camels. Number 7, blood red waterfalls. I'm sure you've seen this at some point, so I have to of course mention in a part 2. If I came across this in the wild, I would be quite alarmed. I would ask some questions as well. On the southern side of our planet, there's a waterfall in Antarctica that is blood red. The edge of Taylor Glacier houses this one-of-a-kind waterfall. It pours right into Lake Bonny. Now, millions of years ago, when sea levels rose up, glaciers formed at the top of said lake. So this melting water that's slowly leaking out from, a quarter-mile deep, this water is 3 times saltier and apparently 3 times scarier. When the iron-rich water reaches the air, it looks bloody. Therefore scary. I'll put my hands back down now. Let's move on. Number 6, giant beaver skull. So the Yukon permafrost, it's a hot spot. Ironically, it seems, for fossils. Lots of ancient animals stuck in time and in great condition, luckily for us. Scientific name for this one is Castorides ohianus. Sure. That sounded like the closest it'll ever be. This giant beaver was on average larger than us humans. They were massive. As Jurassic Park as this thing looks, it only ate pondweeds, which is pretty hilarious. You would think otherwise looking at it, right? One of the largest rodents in history, and they were probably just really cute, and they ate little plants. 50,000 years ago, they didn't chomp on trees. Just weeds. Nice, we like that. Go eat all the weeds. I hate when they touch my feet when I'm swimming in lakes. Like others on this list, they eventually moved north. They followed the ideal conditions to survive in, and that led them ultimately to their icy grave that is now the Yukon permafrost, where we go, wow, more teeth. Number 5, Antarctica Pyramid. Over on our history channel, Bumblebee, I talk about the pyramids of Egypt a lot. Maybe a little too much. Once I heard about pyramids in Antarctica, I had to know what was going on. Back in 2016, a mountain in Antarctica was trending online, and we all immediately thought that it was evidence of an ancient civilization, because that's what we want to see, right? That's what we're all waiting for. We're like, James Webb, please show us something scary. Eric Rignot, a professor of Earth System Sciences at the University of California, reached out to Live Science when this was all unfolding, adding that, quote, pyramid shapes are not impossible. Many peaks partially look like pyramids, but they only have 1 or 2 faces like that. Rarely 4. Yeah, that's all it is, just a natural pyramid. Or maybe it's aliens, who knows? I'm leaning towards the latter of the two. Number 4, 90 million year old rainforest. Back in 2020, while we were all catching up on Ozark, disappointing finale, fossil traces in West Antarctica were found. Now this time it wasn't a giant beaver or a bloody waterfall from back in time, I don't know. This time it was kinda nice. This time it was an ancient rainforest. 90 million years ago, when dinosaurs were once walking around, Antarctica was once a paradise. What a sight to see. Researchers compare Antarctica in the Cretaceous period to New Zealand today, right? It was hot, it was gorgeous, with most days on an average of 12 degrees Celsius, like Seattle, right? Some hot days and then some Seattle days. I love how scientists compare eras with modern day city temperatures. Oh, the Ice Age? Oh, a lot of Regina energy there. Yeah, a lot of Western Canada, very cold, not ideal for dinosaurs. But apparently it was a paradise, so we missed out. So cold. Number 3, meteorite. For this one, we're gonna switch it up, right? Taylor McWaters, I like to jazz it up every now and then. This time, scientists found ice in a meteorite, not rock in ice. Yeah, little flip flip. That's always a good time. James Webb is about to show us how much water is in space, and personally, I'm not ready for it. Back in 1990, the Actor 094 meteorite was discovered in the Algerian mountains. The rock was dated back to 4.6 billion years ago, so scientists studied the meteorite with synchrotron radiation-based X-ray nanotomography. That sentence was choppy because I couldn't say it all in one go, obviously. This led scientists to find evidence of tiny pores. Pores believed to have been fossilized ice crystals. Now these pores may have come from when the meteorite crossed this snow line out in space. The snow line is a sphere around the sun, and it's the exact point where ice on meteorites melts, right? That's the snow line, the more you know. This study was to hopefully find out where water comes from in the galaxy, and it seems that it came from a lot further than we all thought. I got goosebumps saying that, I didn't like that. James Webb stuff today, I'm like, oh, we're so small. Number 2, Grasshopper Glacier. Yeah, if you're not a fan of bugs, you can go ahead and skip to number 1. I won't take it personally. I'll save some bits for that one too. A glacier in Montana is home to many grasshoppers and locusts. Yeah, locusts, it's a fun word. Imagine heading to a glacier and you forget bug spray. Ah, what a fool you are. Appropriately named Grasshopper Glacier, the mile-long glacier near Crook City holds the remains of extinct grasshoppers. Yeah, they're not alive, don't worry. They're just frozen and then stuck looking at you like this. That's better. These poor guys were traveling to find new life, and they must have got caught up in a blizzard a long time ago. Now they're stuck here for another few hundred years. This reminds me of those suckers that have a gross bug in the center, you know? It's like a bug. Why do people buy those? I would never buy them, that's so gross. Number 1, fish eat fish. If you know anything about me, is that I'm not a fan of lakes. Not at all, no. Oceans, sure, if I can see my feet, we're grooving, okay, we're laughing. If I'm looking down in goggles and I can't see shit, I'm out of the lake. I don't even strap them on my head, I just put my eyes in them and rest them on the water. This video went viral not too long ago, and it's very real. These two brothers were fishing on Indiana's Wawasee Lake, and they saw a pike eating a bass, only both parties were completely still. Both parties were already dead. Both were completely frozen. How epic. What happened? How are they stuck like this? They posted the photo originally and nobody believed that it was real, so they had to follow up and post a video where they actually removed this scene of events from the ice. Yeah, I would think this is fake too. This looks like a life lesson somewhere that has to be told. Just a fish eating a fish frozen, you know? There's bigger fish out there. There's smaller fish out there. Sometimes fish freeze. I don't know, I'll do like 9 more. I don't know what the message is. Number 10, scimitar cat bone. Right off the hop, there have only been a few scimitar cat fossils found in history, period. So already this is a good one, right? We love rare finds. I'm into Pokemon Go, so this is like, oh, a scimitar cat bone. Nice, add that to the collection. The Homotherium latidens lives again. Back in 2011, a bone of the beast was found on a Dominion Creek mining site right next to Dawson City in Yukon. Yeah, you wanna make fun of Canadians for living in the cold? Well, joke's on you, pal. We have frozen scimitar cat bones. Yeah, in your face. In your face. Researchers at Copenhagen sequenced its genome, and its parents were only distantly related, so this was a rare cat while it was alive, let alone found frozen 47,000 years later, in 2011. We love it. Number 9, the oldest ice on the planet. They say you're as cold as ice, but never as old as ice. Let's change that, let's make a new phrase. Why not? Scientists are digging up ice in Antarctica. There's pretty much nothing else to dig up, so obviously. Millions of years of ice hides in there, so there's of course millions of ancient secrets. John Higgins, a geochemist at Princeton, believes that there's 5 million year old ice still intact. And I want to lick it. I want to see what it tastes like, you know what I mean? Just ready to probe. Weird to say that and then immediately the probe thing. We'll do one or the other. Lick ice and then probe it. I'm like, who is this guy? One group is claiming to have found 8 million years old ice, but climatologist Eric Wolf from the University of Cambridge says, my attitude is that I accept that it's old ice. I don't know if it's exactly 8 million, but I accept that it's old ice. Yeah, scientists are beefing about Ice Age, not the movies, like the age of the, you get it. There've been way too many of those movies, eh? It's like 7 now. Number 8, frozen bird. Back in 2018, an extremely well-preserved bird was found in northeastern Siberia, near the village of Balaya Gora. The bird itself was quite hidden, which explains its incredible preservation. It was found 150 meters into an ice tunnel, and the fascinating thing here, other than of course, you know, oh my god, a mummified bird, is that it looks like it died a week ago, right? If I found this, I wouldn't look twice, to be honest. I'd be like, ugh, then I'd keep walking, you know, one of those. This bird froze 48,000 years ago. It's a long time, he's been dead. RIP 1,000 times, my little dude. Studying the bird's DNA has given researchers insight on the end of the last ice age. We love it, we love new info in the shape of dirty old birds. Nice. Number 7, ice worms. This is the Dune sequel you didn't know you wanted. Here we go. Around 24,000 years ago, these rotifers, or wheel creatures, or ice worms, they live in freshwater environments. They've been on our planet for millions of years, so it was only a matter of time before they came back to life. Yeah, that's their secret, Cap. They're immortal. Researchers have been studying these little guys for a while, and in the past they found that modern rotifers could freeze and then come back to life 10 years later. Yeah, a microscopic worm with a buzzsaw as a mouth can come back to life. The more you know. Hit that thumbs up on Most Amazing Top 10. I'm so scared. A year ago, these Ice Age worms were found 12 feet deep under permafrost in Siberia's Alizaya River. These ones came back to life after 24,000 years. Must be some Tuck Everlasting water around them or something. I don't know. They're built different. Number 6, viruses. Before we get into the mummified mammoth cubs, we gotta talk about some concerning finds, of course. Just over a year ago in China, scientists discovered ancient viruses. These samples came from the Tibetan Plateau, and these samples were originally collected back in 2015. The contents, however, they date back to around 14,400 years ago, long before Captain America went into the ice. This is some ancient stuff right here. So dust, gases, and of course viruses over that long accumulate, and glaciers just soak it all in, layer after layer, just growing, getting bigger and stronger. Well, not necessarily anymore, but you get it. That is until scientists come in with a few mega drills. Now we're finding dinosaurs, and it's fascinating. Except for, when you find 33 ancient viruses in the ice. We don't like that. Yeah, 33 viruses. That's like 2 more than my family computer had growing up. That's a lot of viruses. 4 of these viruses typically infect bacteria, and the rest were novel, which means that it's never been seen before. How neat is that? Novel viruses. Just what the world needs, right? Oh, God. Number 5, preserved wolf pup. This little lady went into the ice 57,000 years ago. I bet she had no idea she'd ever see the sun again until now. Here we go. Discovered in Yukon, Canada, Zur is the most complete wolf mummy that has ever been found in history. Ever. She's incredibly intact. She was discovered in 2016 by a gold miner while they were blasting water at frozen mud. They thought it was treasure, but really it was just this little shiny lady instead. She's quite old to us, but when she went into the ice, x-rays tell us she was only 6 weeks old. It's pretty sad. X-rays also showed that she loved fish. She had a belly full of fish. She was eating good until she froze. Sad. Number 4, underneath Thwaites Glacier. We've seen some fascinating stuff here on Most Amazing Top 10, specifically underwater footage. I can't do that, but they love giving me those lists. I get nice and anxious doing those ones. This is footage from the bottom of an Antarctic glacier. This is incredible. This is something we shouldn't have been able to see in our lifetime. This glacier is the size of Florida, okay? So if it collapses, our sea levels could rise 10 feet. So yeah, let's drill a hole through the middle and see what happens. We love it, all in the name of science. This was back in 2019. Researchers drilled 2,300 feet through the Thwaites Glacier and dropped a robot with a camera down. This is the first time in history we've seen the grounding zone of Thwaites Glacier. Lead scientist Brittany Schmidt says this project is a dream come true. It's her walking on the moon moment. There's only 1 meter of space between the bottom of the glacier and the rocky seafloor. So you're seeing the bottom of a continent, basically, like in Smash Bros, the very bottom of that floating arena. That's it, right here, underwater. I'm so scared. I feel so small looking at this. Would you swim underneath it, Chris? No, I wouldn't either. I would do this and then go back. Screw that. Yo, it's deep too, and it's like, literally like it's like a triangle at the bottom, and it's like you see the ocean floor is like right there. I'm like, this is actually really scary. It gets my heart going. I can't do this. Afraid of lakes and fish and ghosts. Number 3, Europa Cryobot. We've talked about Jupiter's moon on this channel often for some reason. Apparently there's a lot of going on up there. But now we found traces of water on the icy shell of the moon, which is fascinating in general because water in space, I mean, hello, have you seen Alien or Aliens or any movie in space? The part that really has NASA's attention here is the tectonic activity beneath the icy shell, meaning that somewhere in the middle there could be warm water flowing. Yeah, there's a spa. You could just float. There's a lazy river on this moon. We love it. One of the only ways to get under that thick shell of ice and find out what's really going on is Valkyrie. Yeah, not the superhero from Thor. She's a cryobot that NASA created specifically for this mission. Yeah, a little pricey, but she's doing the trick. This machine is capable of melting through layers and layers of ice. A prototype was tested recently in Alaska, and the results were promising because, it worked. So yeah. This cryobot is capable of crawling through 8 kilometers of ice a year. So while we do tests here on Earth, we're just gonna keep finding more fascinating mummies or disgusting, scary things like viruses. One of the two. It's science. Hey, we're doing our best. Number 2, Project Iceworm. This one has no actual worms in it, just so you know. That was the gross one up there. This is more of a government one. Here we go. As a Canadian, this secret project sounds like the worst one on this list. Ah, it's so cold. I'm sick of the cold. Had it. Back in the 1960s, under the Greenland ice sheet, the US Army started to build mobile nuclear missile launch sites. Yeah, codename was Project Iceworm. And now we're still finding a whole bunch of gadgets and bad stuff there, so they didn't do a great job cleaning up. The idea here with the project is that they would be close enough they could hit targets within the Soviet Union, right? That was the whole point. This project was called Project Iceworm, but there was also another project, a little secret one, called Camp Sentry. This one had to be done first. Camp Sentry was a network of underground tunnels and places for workers to stay, like a kitchen, a hall, supply rooms, communication centers, all good stuff like that. There's also a nuclear power plant, and this was kept from the Danish government for 7 years. So yeah, some secret nuclear activity. We always gotta talk about that on Most Amazing Top 10. Back in 1966, the project was canceled because of shifting ice. Or was it? There's still some activity going on over there. No one knows what's up. Thought I'd get that in your ear before we do our big bad number 1. Here we go. And finally, coming in at number 1, preserved mammoth cub. In 2010, a mummified mammoth cub was discovered in Siberia, right off the coast of Oyogos. Named after a nearby village, Yuka, the newfound cub is now the best preserved mammoth discovered in history. This was a fascinating find that should have never been seen again, let alone seen in such great condition. Guy looks like he was in Ice Age, like the movie Ice Age. He looks great. But that's not the end for the woolly mammoth. No, it was announced only months ago that a team of scientists and entrepreneurs over at a company called Colossal are planning to bring the colossal woolly mammoth back to life. Here we go. Imagine driving and you see one of these crossing the street, you're like, I guess we'll wait. The last mammoth to walk on the planet was alive around 10,500 years ago. But what if they were alive today? What's the whole point, right? Why are we doing this? Colossal raised over $15 million and they're now working on reviving the woolly mammoth to ideally decelerate the melting of the Arctic permafrost and to ideally save modern elephants from extinction and of course to advance CRISPR editing because, you know, we can. Why not? Hey, let's bring this back to life because CRISPR editing, the classic CRISPR.
First up in our number 10 spot, we have mummified remains. There is a huge debate surrounding if George Mallory was actually the first man to ever reach the summit of Mount Everest or not. In 1924, George Mallory, along with his climbing companion, Sandy Irvine, was spotted through a telescope a mere 200 to 300 meters shy of the summit. But sadly, they never returned, leading to almost a century of speculation as to whether they actually were the first to reach the top of the mountain or not. Years later, in 1999, the remains of George Mallory were found, mummified and lying head down on the north side of the mountain. And it was widely believed from the injury marks that Mallory died from a sharp blow to the head, caused by crashing into a rock jutting out on the mountain. So, definitely an unsettling thing to come across. However, the group that discovered him hoped Mallory's camera would be with his remains and that once and for all they would be able to settle the debate if they had reached the summit or not all those years ago. But the camera was nowhere to be found. Moving on to number 9, Rainbow Valley. Don't let the cheery name fool you. Rainbow Valley is anything but. The area found along the Northeast Ridge route unfortunately is not a fun stop along the hike, but it is actually a pit of dozens of dead bodies from hikers who did not survive the journey. The area earned its name due to the amount of bright jackets and gear either left behind by climbers or still wrapped around their frozen bodies. And many hikers who have passed it and survived the journey say it is a very freaky and eerie section to walk through. There are apparently corpses strewn across the mountain in this area, despite the fact that Nepal law states that bodies should be removed immediately to keep the sacred sanctity of the mountain. However, it happens so often that it is virtually impossible to do so. According to Strange Remains, other climbers will occasionally attempt to push them to a better resting place, but as they are frozen solid, sometimes that is not even possible. Moving on to number 8. A UFO. So this next one isn't technically a frozen thing that was found, but it's a pretty crazy story about something that was seen on the mountain still, so I had to include it today. Back in 1933, while on his first attempt at Everest's summit, English climber Frank Smythe was alone on Everest's North Ridge when he witnessed something that would leave him speechless. He says he saw, quote, 2 curious objects floating in the sky. They strongly resembled
kite balloons in shape, but one possessed what appeared to be squat, underdeveloped wings, and the other a protuberance suggestive of a beak. They hovered motionless but seemed slowly to pulsate, a pulsation incidentally much slower than my own heartbeats. What's more is that prior to this alleged UFO sighting, Smythe claimed to have been visited by some unidentifiable force during his ascent and felt a strong presence beside him as he moved up the slopes. Apparently, he even took a slice of mint cake from his pocket to share with this invisible companion, having believed the immaterial entity to be entirely real. Moving on to number 7, a frozen astronaut. While on leave from NASA, Carl Gordon Hennies decided to take a hiking expedition to Mount Everest with a British research group called High Adventure BVI, with the intention to test the tissue equivalent proportional counter at different altitudes. This study was going to reveal how people's bodies would be affected, including the way bodily tissues behaved when struck by radiation, which was important for the planning of long-duration space missions. However, unfortunately, the mission didn't go to plan. Prior to the start of the hike, Hennies acclimatized in Nepal, followed by acclimatization at Expedition Base Camp in China, and following those, Hennies with 3 members of High Adventure BVI began the hike on October 4th, 1993. However, Hennies soon reported breathing problems on his way to Advanced Base Camp, and when the oxygen treatments failed, they decided to return to base camp. Tragically, that night, Hennies died in his sleep from high altitude pulmonary edema, and his body was left on the mountain per his own request prior to heading out on the mission. Coming in at number 6, green boots. One of Everest's most notorious landmarks seen on the north route is called Green Boots, and it is rather darkly named after the green mountain boots worn by the corpse, who not only marks the spot, but also whose identity is still up for debate. It's unknown when the term green boots became the unofficial official name for the corpse and the area, but it was first recorded in May of 1996 by British filmmaker and climber Matt Dickinson, and eventually, over the years, it became a common term as more and more of the expeditions from the north side encountered the body of the climber curled up in the limestone cave. Now, as I mentioned, it's not confirmed who this climber was, but many suspect the corpse belonged to Indian climber named Zawang Paljar, who was part of an Indian summit attempt in 1996. Paljar and his team members were caught in a blizzard, and sadly, all but one succumbed to the elements just after descending from a successful summit attempt. The infamous green boots and the man remain to this day and serve as an eerie landmark for hikers passing by. Moving on to number 5, Maurice Wilson. In 1933, Maurice Wilson hatched a plan to fly into the northern slopes of Everest, crash land his plane, and then solo climb to the summit. He trained in Britain, hiking and learning to fly planes, before spending the winter in Darjeeling, where he prepared for his climb by fasting and praying, which he believed would be enough to see him to the peak. His plans, however, to fly a plane close to the summit and then hike from there were turned down by the authorities, and so he had to go to plan B. Instead, he decided to start his quest from the Rombuk Glacier. So Wilson set off on foot, but with a lack of climbing experience, a lack of how to use equipment, and putting too much faith into prayer to get him all the way, he soon found himself in over his head. Then on May 22nd, 1934, he was eventually blocked by an ice wall, and the following year in 1935, his body was found in snow surrounded by his blown apart tent. Next up at number 4, David Sharp. After 2 unsuccessful attempts with groups in 2003 and 2004 that resulted in him losing several of his toes to frostbite, David decided his goal to reach the summit of Everest was not yet over. In 2006, he made his 3rd and final journey, and for some reason was determined to make the trek without supplemental oxygen and minimal equipment. Now, it's been debated whether David had actually made it to the summit or not after all. But at some point he began a descent, but sadly he never made it all the way down. David crouched down in the shelter of the Green Boots cave we spoke about earlier, and ultimately succumbed to the horrifically frigid elements overnight. Now, what's especially scary about David Sharp's case in particular is that allegedly at least 40 other climbers were recorded passing by him prior to his actual death, and the other climbers were accused of ignoring the unspoken climbers code of helping out their fellow travelers when they are in distress. Now, according to them, David was already too far gone by the time they passed him, but either way, passing a man actively dying or passing an actual dead body are both scary options if you ask me. Moving on to number 3, a familiar face. As has become abundantly clear during this video, there are sadly quite a few dead people along the route to the summit of Mount Everest, but I would imagine this man's experience would be one of the more jarring ones. In 2011, Rodney Hogg was attempting to reach the summit on Everest when he actually bumped into a corpse who seemed eerily familiar. As it turns out, it was. The perfectly preserved body belonged to his late friend Peter Kinloch, who sadly, after conquering the summit, suffered snow blindness during descent and died on the way back down. Although his guides and Sherpas tried desperately to help him down the mountain over a span of 10 hours, they were soon deprived of oxygen and began to suffer hypothermia themselves and were eventually forced to leave him behind. When his friend Rodney found his perfectly preserved icy corpse a few months later, he spent a few moments paying his last respects and then continued on with his attempt. Coming in at number 2, Sleeping Beauty. Now, if you ask me, I think the nickname is a bit morbid, but that really is what this woman was called for many years. In 1998, American climber Frances Arsentiev was joined by her husband Sergei and successfully became the first woman to reach the summit without the use of supplemental oxygen. But sadly, she did not get a happy ending following that. Just 1,000 feet away from the summit, her nearly frozen body was discovered by 2 other climbers, Ian Woodall and his fiancée Kathy O'Dowd. Following the unspoken climbers code, the couple gave up on their own journey to assist her and help her survive any way they could, but sadly they soon realized it was already too late. Apparently her husband Sergei had left after attempting to supply his wife with oxygen and medicine from fellow climbers, but died trying to find her again. And the climbers said Frances's last words to them, "Don't leave me." For years, her body remained frozen in plain view, but in 2007, Ian returned to Everest and brought her body to a lower position to rest in peace with a proper burial.